An analytical allocation is the posting of an amount for a single account to several analytical dimension values. For example, you want to post the electric bill to the utility expense account and distribute the amount across 3 dimension values under Cost Center, Accounting, Administration, and IT. Defining and using an analytical allocation makes this task easier to achieve. Instead of distributing the amount 3 times to the account, you can use an analytical allocation and distribute the amount automatically to all 3 dimension values in one line. When posting entries, you can allocate an amount to an account and to a specific analytical dimension value. However, you cannot allocate an amount to multiple dimension values on the same transaction line. Analytical allocations are used to distribute an amount to several dimension values when entered on a single transaction line. When adding an analytical allocation, select the dimension type to be used. Then enter each analytical value along with its corresponding conversion factor. This conversion factor represents the coefficient used to calculate the amount to assign to the dimension value. These factors are not percentages and do not have to total 100%. When entering a line item for a transaction, the amount is distributed to one specific dimension value. If you need to distribute the amount to multiple dimension values, you would need to enter multiple transaction lines for the same account number, and each line would have a different dimension value. To eliminate these multiple lines, you can use an analytical allocation and let the system automatically distribute the transaction amount to the predefined dimension values. Let's take a look at entering and using analytical allocations in your system. To add an analytical allocation, you will use the Analytical Allocation function under the Common Data menu. I am going to add an allocation for my monthly telephone bill. I'm going to distribute it against the Administration, Engineering, HR, and IT cost centers. I will click New in the right-hand panel, and then I'll enter in a distribution code. It can be up to 10 characters in length. And then enter in a description. You can enter in a short description and an access code. Next, you'll come down and you'll select your dimension types. I'm going to use my cost center, so mine will be CCT. And then enter in the conversion factor for each cost center. I'll have my administration be 6. My engineering will be 15. My HR will be 3. And finally, my IT will be 3. Once again, these conversion factors are not percentages and they do not have to add up to 100%. Once I have my distribution created, I will click Create in the right-hand panel. To use my analytical allocation, I will enter in a journal entry from the Financials menu. I'll select my 1 page per column, and then I'll click New in the right-hand panel. I'll enter in my site and select my entry type of GENAJ. I'll then come down and put in my entry date. And accept my default journal code. I'll leave my category as actual and my status as temporary. And for my source document, I will say it's my telephone bill. And I can even enter that for my reference. I'll select my telephone expense account. I'll enter in my amount of $6,000, put in my description, and then in the distribution field, I will select my telephone distribution code. And then I'll put in the rest of my transaction. I'll have it go against my cash account. And then I'll click Create. To see what this did, I will click on the action card at the beginning of the line where I entered it in using my analytical allocation, and I will come down to Analytical Account Inquiry. Notice that I do have my telephone account 71600, and then notice that my amount, my $6,000, was distributed against each one of my cost centers that I had listed in my analytical allocation. In this lesson, you have learned about creating and using analytical allocations. When building the allocation, you choose what dimension types and dimension values you will be distributing across. And finally, when using the allocation, you choose the account to post to and choose the allocation to distribute across the dimension values.